Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another Amicable Divorce Discussion. This presentation features Tami Wollensak, and she is a certified divorce lending professional, and she's also our Amicable ambassador for the Chicago area, and so she is very involved in the network. These amicable divorce discussions are geared to be a short snippet of information so that you can get to know our professionals, and they can also talk about a topic for you that will help you, whether you are a professional helping clients through the divorce process or you yourself are going through the divorce process. This is very helpful information for you to know to set you up for the best success post-divorce. Tami has been a mortgage professional for 25 years and is a certified divorce lending professional, which means that she has gotten additional training on how to help parties, particularly facing divorce, with how to craft your settlement agreement, what is available through the divorce process, how to treat child support, alimony, different things like that that come up in the divorce process. She has special training in those matters in order to help her clients get to the finish line and achieve housing success, basically. So what Tami and I are talking about today are some of those difficult financing scenarios that come up, roadblocks to mortgage success. So thank you, Tami, for joining me today. Did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to include and let people know about you before we jump in?
No, I sure appreciate that introduction, Tracy, and thanks for having me. And no, that incorporates quite a bit. And I've been in the lending space for quite some time. But when I realized that there really was a gap between family law and the mortgage industry, that's really where my passion kind of kicked in. And I was like, this is somewhere where I could really help and make a difference. Because if you can kind of come up with all these options prior to signing your settlement agreement, then it just does make for a more successful divorce, as we both know. So
I can't agree more. For those of you who don't know me, I am an attorney, and I'm also a mediator. And so when I am an attorney in a case, I get to give my client legal advice, and that advice always is very first, meet with a certified divorce lending professional, because we don't want to be spinning our wheels and negotiating for something that's not practical. Or perhaps the certified divorce lending professional will give us some guidance on next steps to set my client up for success. But where I'm always surprised is when I'm the mediator and I'm a neutral person. I don't know anything about the case prior to attending the mediation, and the parties are negotiating what to do with the marital home, and nobody's talked to anybody in the financing industry. And so I'm usually just sitting there like, do y'all want to call somebody and, see if this is even practical before right. You sign this binding agreement. That is the key. If you take nothing else away from this talk today,
right.
if you are looking at refinancing, getting a new home, anything having to do with a mortgage, investigate your options before you sign and negotiate and do anything. So
yes, I mean, there's a lot of emotion tied to the home, and I think people really kind of don't understand that there are logistics and guidelines and rules that they have to adhere to post-divorce in order to accomplish the things that they were looking to do. A lot of emotion comes into play when there's support being paid out or received, right? And a lot of times they don't understand that there is timelines that need to be met. There's stability and consistency tests that need to be met in the mortgage industry. And what that means is maintenance or alimony or child support has to be received for a certain amount of time. And then there has to be a certain amount of continuance, meaning you have to have a certain amount of time that you're going to be receiving that money in order to use that money as qualified income, what we call qualified income. Just because you know the amount of money that's going in your bank account every month, people get very confused by that because they think, well, I have this amount of money coming in my bank account every month. But as a mortgage lender, a lot of times we end up chunking down those income streams to what we can use as qualified income. So
Yeah.
that's really where a big disconnect comes into
Mhm.
play.
Exactly. So something I want to highlight is, as an attorney, we have certain parameters and guidelines that we advise our client. Just as an example, we would be saying, you need to be able to give your spouse half of the equity from the home, right? So that might be a fair equitable division. In our state, I'm in Georgia, we use equitable division here. However, from a financing standpoint, that's very different. Somebody may visit you, and after you run the numbers, you may say, you cannot do a cash pullout, essentially an equity pullout of half the equity,
Yes.
because of all these different reasons. So the legal recommendations and guidelines are totally different than what is available to you
Right.
in mortgage guidelines.
Yeah, so when I put together what I call a divorce mortgage plan, I give them all the options and what that looks like. You cannot just look at your mortgage payment the way it would be today and assume that post-divorce the mortgage payment is going to look the same. If you're being court ordered to refinance that home in your own name, you have to refinance within the current market rates. You have to take into consideration there might be a difference in that rate and what the terms would be. So a lot of things come into play regarding that. And then if you're on top of that, having to cover an amount of equity so that you can pay out your spouse, that could increase the mortgage balance, right? And
Mhm.
could create a larger mortgage payment.
Mhm.
So by doing so and knowing what those options are before you sign your settlement agreement, you might say, "Oh, that's not what I was looking for at all, and that's really not what I want to do, and I'm not comfortable with that payment because of X, Y, or Z," right?
All right.
And then maybe you could pivot and like make a different decision that would be better for you in your future.
Yeah. You always want to know beforehand. It's nothing to run these scenarios and to know what your options are to set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
Something else that you touched on was receiving a monthly payment every month on a regular basis. And something I see a lot is, generally I have a financially dominant spouse in a case who's simply paying the expenses. Maybe they're on auto draft, or they're just covering the expenses. And
Yeah.
so something that I've started looking at is, if somebody meets with a professional like you early on, we might convert that to a monthly payment to
Yeah.
say, okay, well, the expenses all add up to be $2,500 a month. Get that $2,500 a month deposited on the first day of every month to start a payment history. Am I doing it right?
That is exactly right. Yes, and I see that all the time. In order to meet stability and consistency tests, it has to be paid as ordered, and it has to be paid from one spouse in an individual account the other spouse in an individual account. Can't be commingled, can't be
Mhm.
netted out, can't be all those things. So for an example purposes, if you're going to receive 5,000 a month on the first of the month, spouse A has to pay 5,000 a month on the first of the month to spouse B, right?
Yep.
As ordered. Otherwise, I can't use it. So
Mhm.
you can't just pay, like, you can't pay, oh, one month I'm going to pay 5,000 and I'm going to make it up the next month and
Mhm.
pay, 10,000 the next month. That also will
Right.
kill mortgage
And
financing
just
because
paying
it's not
expenses doesn't
right.
count. It doesn't show anything.
Right, and just paying the expense or netting it out, saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, we're gonna pay you 5,000 a month, but out of that 5,000, and I'm gonna pay the utilities and this and that and the other thing, and then I'll give you the difference." That
So,
doesn't work either.
and this is the way I think that you're sort of directing us to do it. So for example, if I have a client and they meet with you and it's February, you come up with a scenario that they should be getting a certain amount, we should start that, but we're not really ready to finalize the divorce. But the two attorneys, particularly when you're using attorneys in the Amicable Divorce Network, can have a meaningful discussion about how do we set up both clients for success. And so we can share that plan. And so, you know, if they were to agree, $2,500 a month will cover the bills and start depositing that February 15th. When we do finalize that divorce, we can backdate our order. So if we're not finalizing the divorce until May, we could say in our agreement, support starting $2,500 a month in February, and go back in time to show that history, because it will take into account payments that have been made prior to the divorce being final. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And with an order in place, I can use that as the receipt, the timeline, or the clock starting, basically, because the clock has to start sometime and you have to be receiving it. Most mortgage programs require 6 months of receipt. So if you have a timeline that starts then, it just speeds up the process to be able to complete the transaction quicker. Otherwise, you have to kind of still wait that 6 months to be able to receive that money.
Because everybody wants things done as soon as possible. So if everybody sort of has their eye on the same prize, the mortgage getting refinanced and these things happening, then, you know, we can get both parties on the same page about what needs to be done. And often I found if I get something in writing from somebody like a certified divorce lending professional that really isn't on anybody's side, you know, they don't have a dog in the hunt, so to speak. That's a great tool to negotiate with, to say this professional has assessed the situation and makes this recommendation.
Right. And there's really no downside to bringing us in. I mean, because of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, we do not charge for our services. We cannot charge a consulting fee. We can't charge a consulting fee for a divorcing client because it's a protected class. Marital status is a protected class. We can't charge a divorcing client and then not charge a first-time home buyer. So we, you know, our consultations are complimentary. We help the divorce team and we make for a much better divorce. A successful divorce, right? Making sure that everything that you're agreeing to can be carried out. And you know, then you also have a really good relationship with that person and helping them make those decisions with you and next to you that are the best for you and your family, you know, post-divorce. That's what's really important.
So let's talk about another roadblock that we see often when we're dealing with divorces, and that is when somebody hasn't been employed in a while. A lot of times, you know, maybe somebody's been laid off or they voluntarily stopped working to be at home with kids and they've had an interruption in employment. What needs to happen for these parties to have mortgage success?
Well, there's a couple of ways that you can go about it. I mean, I have clients sometimes that come to me that were working part-time, you know, over the time period or not working at all. And like you said, there was a big job gap. If you can create a history and explain a job gap, sometimes you can utilize that new income, but you do need a history of that, typically 6-month history in order to use a new job, depending on the type of income that you receive from that. The other thing that I see a lot is if there's a lump sum payout and the spouse is going to be buying out the maintenance or the support payments, I can sometimes create an income stream for people. And we can create what's called a revocable trust and put it in trust. And then you can create an income stream that would be able to be utilized as income and then not have employment necessarily because of that. So we can get really creative, but we can give the divorce team all the options so that you can make a better decision for what works for you.
Yeah, again, good to know on the front end for sure before you sign anything.
Right. So there doesn't need to be really employment necessarily in order to have a successful way to either keeping the house or buying a new house.
Yeah, that is a really interesting and creative way to do it is through a trust. So that's, you know, something also, you know, maybe as an attorney, we haven't come across or thought of, but this is exactly what, you know, certified divorce lending professionals have training in, getting creative. And their ultimate goal is for individuals to be able to meet their financing goals, to refinance, get a new home, whatever it is. And so, you know, they have a lot of different options that we just aren't trained in. You know, I think attorneys are famous for saying, you know, I became an attorney because I'm not good at math, you know, but you
Well,
know,
it's
we're
not your
not
lane.
mortgage brokers. We're not in the
Yeah,
financing arena. That's, you know, I always tell people, stay in your lane. We have, you know, great
totally.
people in our network who are already experts in these areas that you can call upon to help you out.
Just like we don't give legal or tax advice, you know,
Yeah.
all we do is we talk about the mortgage options. That's
Mhm.
our lane. We stay in that lane, and then we give the entire divorce team all the options so that they can make the decisions with regarding what makes the most sense.
Yeah. And again, do it on the front end. If you are watching this and you would like to work with Tami or reach out to her, you can find her on the Amicable Divorce Network website under our membership directory. We'll also have her information under this video so that you can reach out to her directly with any questions that you may have. I know, Tami, you have a ability to help with mortgages in 46 states. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I
So
work
tell us
for,
the 4 states you
okay,
can't help.
that's much
That's
easier.
easier.
So it's Alaska, Alabama, Hawaii, and New York.
Okay.
So
So unless you're in those 4 states, you can reach out to Tami and she can assist you, jump in with financing help, some creativity before you start negotiating, know what your options are. So thank you very much to Tami for sharing your insight today. And thank you for watching to learn more about our Amicable Divorce Network professionals.
Thank you, Tracy Ann. I sure appreciate it.